Hey everybody, welcome back to the 96th episode of Taps and Patience. I'm AJ with Audacity Micro here with Harrison of Precision Ingenuity. How you doing, Harrison?
I have about a week's worth of exhaustion that's hitting all right now.
Yeah,
So,
I having been talking to you over like Instagram for the last couple days, I have been seeing that.
so it's we've been balls to the walls since about Wednesday of last week. Um and I was getting used to working crazy hours kind of. And then today we finally got caught up. And so I took off work just a little bit early and I laid down for a brief nap. And that was a mistake because
Yep.
now, like, all that exhaustion has hit me and I woke up and I'm just like out of it right now. So,
I have definitely had those weeks and those months before, so I feel it.
yeah.
I think
So,
everybody here can sympathize. Everybody's listening. Like we've all
oh,
had
yeah.
those days.
It's the
At least if you
grind.
work for yourself. Yeah.
It's the grind. And I mean, we talked about it a little bit last week, but I had Doosan problems that lost me a day of production. And then I had, uh, I say Haas problems, but we'll talk a little bit more about that. It was a coolant problem, is what it kind of they've determined. And so we're looking at changing coolants. And then, but that, while the tech was looking through the Haas, I lost a day of production on that machine. And then Weston was gone for Thursday and Friday and Monday of this week. And so I was by myself, and it was one of the busiest weeks of the year. And so basically, I was at the shop to like midnight slash 2 or 3 a.m. every night for basically a week straight at this point. So
Yeah.
it's been fun.
But you
if
got
your
the parts
definition
made.
if your definition of fun is working your butt off.
Type 2 fun. If
Take
we go
too
by
fun.
the within tolerance definition.
So, anyways, but yeah, that's kind of just uh, overview of what this last week has been like since we last talked. What about you?
So I guess just quick overview for me is I don't know, made a bunch of parts. I shipped a bunch of parts. Other than a super glue issue, which we can talk about, things have been rather tame.
Mm-hmm.
It's been I don't want to say it's been all easy parts, but it's been challenging parts that have gone well.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing too wild or crazy. They just kind of have come off the mill and I've shipped them and things have been good. Um, the one exception to that is I've had problems buying the super glue that I use for the super glue method. And
Mm-hmm.
lately, like all of my parts have been super glue method.
Oh man.
I have ordered 3 different bottles at this point in a row. And well, the third one hasn't arrived yet because I just ordered it today. But the first 2 bottles came in as a solid chunk.
Oh my.
And I had to drive
It's
to the airport the other day because I was waiting for the good glue to show up. And when the glue showed up, it came in as a rock. And so I had to go back to the tape method. And I would have been able to ship the job on time had I started earlier in the day with the tape method, but I was putting it
behind.
off until the good glue got here because I knew it'd be quicker and it's more reliable.
So when the glue shows up as a brick, is there any recourse that you can like get
Yeah.
a refund or something?
So I've ordered the glue from 2 places in the past. I've ordered it from Amazon and I've ordered it from McMaster. Amazon is generally a little bit cheaper, but it's like 3 or 4 days slower where I am. McMaster is, of course, super fast, and it's just a little bit more expensive. I'm just going to go back to ordering from McMaster. But fortunately, when ordering from Amazon, you just send them a message and they give you a refund. So it's been rather painless to get that.
Good. Good. I think Masters always has amazing customer service, so whenever you have problems with them, they resolve it pretty quick.
That's true. But also, McMaster always ships you good stuff.
Yeah,
So I don't know what's going on with Amazon. I assume they just got an old batch that's dried out or something.
that's possible. I wonder how much they have to deal with that as like a glue company. Like you ship out all this product and half of it dries out before it gets to the customer.
Probably a major problem for like 3M or whoever makes,
Mm-hmm.
or Loctite. Are they? I assume they're a 3M company.
Interesting. That might be something that's just built into the price of those products, which makes it more expensive.
And that's why it's $40 a bottle.
Because only half of it makes it to the customer.
Yeah, I was talking to someone on Instagram the other day, and they gave me a couple recommendations of alternatives. I tried a Chinese, like straight off of Alibaba knockoff,
Mm-hmm.
and it's literally just super glue that they dyed black. It's actually worse than regular super glue, so
Mm,
that was kind of a bummer because it was like 100 times cheaper than the Loctite stuff.
makes sense. Usually, if it's too good to be true, usually
Yep.
is.
All right, so tell
So
me about your machine issues.
yeah, so as mentioned last time, we had the Doosan that had the spindle that got damaged. Um, we've been using it ever since then, and I would actually say the noise has gotten a little better. Ironically, it's actually quietened down a little bit.
You wore in the bearing races.
Basically, I think is what's happening. Um, and then I reached out to Doosan today, and from a confidence level of what they're going to do when they said take care of me, what they mean is you're screwed and you're going to have to pay full price if you want to get a new spindle.
Oh man.
So that's what it's sounding like.
Have
So
you actually noticed any differences in the machine cutting other than noise?
not yet.
Okay.
Um, but as Weston said, because we were talking about it today, um, do you really want to trust a spindle that is screaming at you? Like it's going to be a slow death, and then are you going to attribute, bad parts to the Doosan or to the spindle? You're never going to know. And if you're trying to hold tight tolerances, you're not going to know if it's the work holding, the tooling, or the spindle. It just adds another variable. And so the stress levels of using it, you're not going to trust it as much. So until we start seeing those problems, it's in the problem. The other part of the problem is it's such a new machine. I have no baseline to go off of yet, a comfortable baseline. Um, and so we really want to get it fixed, but we really don't want to spend 10 to 20 grand to get a new spindle, which they're supposed to be sending me a quote on what it's going to cost to get it replaced. So yeah, a little frustrating, a lot frustrating.
Yep. Do they know we have a
So
podcast? Do they know who you are?
we'll find out. Um, but
I
yeah,
mean, my mom
it's
listens to this.
yeah. We're gonna sick your mom on them.
Actually, she doesn't
So,
anymore.
but the "we'll take care of you" has turned out to mean basically nothing at this point.
That sounds like it came from the sales guy.
Yeah. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. They haven't ruled out that they'll take care of it, but it sounds like it's like a 5% possibility at this point.
I would
Uh,
still push harder on him.
yeah, unless I go make a YouTube series about why I hate my Doosan, and then they see it and they ask me to take it down but they'll fix the problem to
Yeah.
compensate. Did you ever see that video on and the reason I say that is because I saw it. There's a guy that posted a video on a Mazak 5-axis like
Yeah.
a
I
year
vaguely
ago,
remember that.
and like he was complaining about it, and he's like, I've been fighting this for the last year, and so screw it, I'm taking to the internet to vent my frustrations. And like within a week they like bought the machine back and had him take down the video to like remove the bad press. So and,
I
and
don't
it's
think
it's
Doosan
kind of
would do that.
frustrating that it sometimes takes doing that to hold their feet to the fire, to be like, listen, this is a problem. If you're not going to fix it, I'm just going to go tell the world, type deal. So, but at the same time, I don't want to have to go to that extent. And at the same time, I don't necessarily want to blame. Like I said, at this point, I don't want to blame the Doosan because it was a thrown part. It was something went wrong inside the machine that was outside of normal operating parameters. but it would be hard to say that that's not something that's bound to happen in machining and it's not considered a crash. And so there's kind of two sides of that that is just hard for me to know what the right answer is and what is the right response to look for.
If I bought a car and then hit a pothole and my engine fell out, I would be really mad at the company that made the car.
Yeah, but if that pothole, if you were driving and that pothole took out your tire and rim and maybe damaged the subframe a little bit, and you knew the pothole was going to take out the tire and the rim, but it also damaged the subframe, is that the pothole's problem or the manufacturer's problem?
I mean, but this is the spindle. That's like the heart of your
I
machine.
I know. But
And
I'm trying
potholes are a
to
normal
look
thing
at
for
it as
machine
a
operation.
yeah, I know, but I want to look at it as objectively as possible. I want to give them as fair a shake as possible. I will say that the Doosan rep came by last week, or not Doosan, Mazak rep came by last week, and he mentioned, and I don't know if this is true, so this is pure speculation. Um, but he mentioned that he thinks Haas switched to ceramic bearings um, a little while back, and so he said with the Haas, um, you're not going to damage the spindle until those ceramic bearings basically shatter, and then it's done.
Interesting.
And he said the Doosan, he said, have steel ball bearings in them, and that's why they developed a flat instead of taking it and being okay. So I don't know if that's true. Um, like that's just what the Doosan rep was saying, because I guess he used to be, I think he used to be a Haas rep. Um, if memory serves, although he's no longer a Mazak rep as of last week. So he got scouted out by one of my customers, and he was trying to sell them the machine, and he called the CEO of this company, and they just got talking on the phone, and he offered him a job, and then
That's
Mazak
funny.
found out that he had been offered a job and was considering it and just let him go.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so he was kind of fired, and I believe he's going to get hired by that other company, but that's kind of a like a wild turn of events. And now he's going to become potentially one of my customers. So he went from my salesman to a customer that I'm going to have to try to keep happy. And so like when he was at the shop and he was telling me that this he hadn't lost his job slash changed his job at this point, but while we were talking about it, and what's crazy is he found out about this customer because they were one of our customers. He didn't know about them. He just was walking through our shop and being nosy, looking through our prints, and that we had out on the table, and then it was like, oh, I need to go talk to them, type deal, and and then now he's gonna go work for them, and I'm like, okay, so now I gotta mosey on up to the Doosan or to the Mazak rep, because it's like I haven't bought a Mazak, but you know, think of me in good terms so I can get more work.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just pulling up the comment section from last week's episode,
Mm-hmm.
and
Oh,
you
there's a
were
lot of good
asking.
comments. That
There are a lot of good comments. You were asking about which lathes to go with,
mm-hmm.
and Okuma, Mazak, and Mori were the big three. There's also someone mentioned SMEC and Akari Siki,
Mm-hmm.
who I've never heard of either of those, but someone mentioned them. Okuma
I
sounds
need
like a
to
good option for a lathe.
Akuma would be a very good option. I need to do some shopping around and see what other options are and what other price points there are, because um sometimes it surprises you how close they are. I have noticed that. I've gotten enough quotes now from different things that sometimes things that seem like they should be a mile out aren't, and sometimes things that seem should be they should be a lot closer are a mile out.
Yes,
So
concur.
I do need to go. I like Akuma. Akuma could be good, and even Mazak. Mazak does make some good lathes. I would take their lathes over their mills,
Yeah,
because our local machine shop that's in the area, they have like 11 Mazak lathes, and they're really quiet. They're good machines, but
yeah. Do they do the big? Oh, what are they called? Not Omni Turn. That's a hard inch. Like the
The B
never
axis
mind.
lathes.
Yeah, they have like the big mill turn machines. Is that
Yeah,
Mazak?
that's Intergrex. That's
Integrex.
amazing.
Integrex.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, they have those.
I could
Those are
see you going to like an Integrex. I don't know very much about them.
I
Maybe not, but
I want to. The problem is those jump up to like $500,000 machines. Like
yeah.
for
But at the
everyone.
rate you're growing, give you a couple months. Like,
I was so. Uh, I guess I can spill the beans on this. This is something I forgot about that this reminded me of. I've been interested in getting a dual spindle Y-axis lathe, but one of my customers asked me if I would be interested in making uh, gun slides from scratch, and that is like a perfect B-axis lathe part. And so, like, if I
pistol?
were to,
Yeah, never mind. Slides or pistols. I was thinking
pistol
receivers.
slides,
Never mind. I
pistol
was thinking
slides,
receivers.
and so if that were to happen, I have no idea. This is so far up in the air at this point that like I was hesitant to even bringing it up. But um, there is a chance that we could do pistol slides for this company. And the thing that complicates that is it would only be for a couple years because they
Mm,
want to bring that in house eventually.
yeah.
And so they were upfront about that side of it. But they need someone to make them in the meantime. And if I could jump all the way from my current lathe, skip the dual spindle Y-axis lathe and go to a B-axis lathe, especially with that type of production, even if they did ultimately pull that work back, but there was enough of it in combination with their other lathe work that I could jump to that type of machine, that would be phenomenal. But that's pie in the sky at this point. But that would be awesome.
Would why that over a 5 axis for slides?
So it's bar fed, so it's easier to
Fair.
automate. Um, Slides are round and easy to fit in to a machine like that. And a B-axis lathe is basically a bar-fed 5-axis.
That's true. Yeah,
So,
you have points there.
um, I mean, if you remember the demo that was running at Williman, they were bar feeding aluminum Lego pieces of like minifigures. Like there was no turning on that. So, um, it's a great machine. The biggest problem with that is unless you went to something like a Williman, I don't know how you would, because the Williman has that vise that can grab onto it, and I don't know how you would do that in a B-axis lathe and hold it and to like separate the stock out and then to drop it down. That's the part that I would need to figure out, make sure it would work.
Sub spindle?
Yeah, but you'd have to probably have like a custom like because a
ER
sub
or
spindle's not
emergency
like a
call it.
yeah, but a sub spindle the whole thing is shrinking in and out circular rather than a linear motion like a vice to like grab onto it.
But if you had a pocket in a emergency call it that was just a little bit bigger than your part, it could just
Yeah,
grab.
but it'd be like holding onto a square shaft, but it would be a custom shape. So I'm sure it can be done. I would just have to look into it. But anyways, all that to say, this is so far out of happening at this point. It was just mentioned to me in passing, like this might be a little bit much for you, but would you be interested? Type deal. And I'm very interested in it if I could make it happen.
Could you make them right now on your 5 axis, even if it wouldn't be efficient or as efficient?
Probably, but the tolerances and the high volume is the thing that scares me the most. Um, and so, could it be done? I'm sure it could, but everything would have to be absolutely dialed. And the other side of that equation is if I ever did take on this type of work, a CMM would basically be mandatory for us. And so, um, but I really, really want that work, not only for the financial aspect of it, but also because I think it'd be an amazing challenge to work through. And honestly, if I could say that I've basically made uh, gun pistol slides for a major manufacturer, that's like one of the most premier products on firearms like that. then like it'd be amazing street cred for any other companies that are looking at us.
And there's a lot of money in firearms.
Yeah, yeah. So don't know if it's going to happen. I would not count on it happening at this point. But they brought up those talks to me, and so that seems like a very promising sign. So we'll see. That could be cool.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Um,
Also, the YouTube comments want to let us know that the quote came from A Tale of Two Cities.
yeah,
Here's the best of times and worst of times, and not The Great Gatsby. And also,
yeah.
nobody in our audience has apparently read Seven Eves, which makes me
Oh.
sad, but that's okay.
It's been so long. I was pulling on information from my high school days.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, anyways, that's kind of what's been going on in our world. Um, we had some of the work that I had to do here recently was repeat work from one of my customers, and they were big parts that were expensive parts. And I remember making them the first time, and I had headaches on all of these parts. But because they were repeat work and I already had the programs in there, all of that knowledge was done, and they all ran like butter, and they all turned out like diamonds. I was
That's awesome.
so
That
happy.
always feels great.
It was just like I was stressing so much on all these parts, and especially being under the gun and working till like 1 a.m. trying to get these parts done. If any one of them had been scrapped, my week would have been horrible. And they all turned out just like, except for one part, which is probably the most simple part, and it was because I don't know if Weston just didn't specify it or this is just the only material they had it in, but it was 304 and it was cold worked. And we haven't had cold work 304 in a while. And it pretzeled so hard. Like it bent like
Yeah.
it was bad. It was like a 3/4 inch cold drawn aluminum, or not a cold drawn 304 bar, and we were making a part in it that was um 18 or 19 inches long and
That's a
about
lot of
a
room for
half inch
warpage.
square. It was like a half inch by uh 7/16. And so it was like a half inch and just under a half inch. And it was long and skinny. And as soon as I took everything off and only had the top hat, or the top hat of material on the little bottom sliver, that thing bent hard. And so I took it over to a hydraulic press, and I just kept working it back and forth until I got it perfectly flat. And then I flipped it over and I took the top hat off, and it warped the other direction.
Yeah.
And so I had to take it and back to the press and bend it back straight the other way. And thankfully, like, it was all low tolerance. Like all of their measurements were like plus or minus 15 on the whole part.
Okay. That's a
And so
mile.
like
Yeah.
so I was comfortable, but I mean I wasn't comfortable sending them a potato chip.
Yeah. Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
so but I mean I had to go straighten it out, and that was a pain.
I
It makes
may
me
have to deal with that here in the near future. So I'm
Oh
working on
really?
some parts right now that are A2. I bought pre-ground stock, and they're super glue parts, so that I don't really have to remove material off the top or the bottom, but I have to send them out to heat treat. And they
Mhm.
are, being only a 1/16 of an inch thick, I have a feeling that these things are going to warp like crazy.
Mhm.
So I've been talking to the heat treater, trying to figure out solutions. He like has some ways that he can clamp them down as they're cooling or as they're tempering, one of the two.
Mhm.
And I got Xometry to allow an inspection in a constrained state on these. So
Mhm.
if they warp a little bit, like as long as they, go back to flat when you bolt them down, it should be okay. But
Yeah.
I have no idea how these things are going to turn out.
I will say, to minimize warpage, I've heard that a lot of people like to use I think it's a vacuum heat chamber, but that also helps with the scaling as well.
Yeah.
But someone was telling me that that also helps with warpage for some reason.
Interesting.
And
I hadn't heard
I
that
don't remember why.
before. I
I
guess
think
I
it
could
had
see like air currents causing issues or something.
Yeah, I think it was like it because there's no atmosphere. it gets heated uniformly from the outside in. I think is
Interesting.
what they're trying to tell me. Something like that.
Yeah. This should be vacuum. I guess I never actually asked. That's a good question.
So I did find out that my local machine shop's hardness tester is probably not that accurate. Not as accurate as I was hoping for. Um,
I don't
um,
know if like the normal indent hardness testers are that accurate. I guess I've always
yeah.
had it in my head that there's a certain amount of air bar on them.
Well, we had a part that we were testing, and um, the raw material. So it came in with a material cert. It was supposed to be between 62 Rockwell and 32 Rockwell for hardness, and we measured
It's
it
really
on.
hard.
Or sorry, not 62.
I was like 62 is really really hard.
Sorry, dyslexia kicking in. 26 to
Okay,
32
okay.
Rockwell. 26 to 32 Rockwell. And their hardness tester measured it at 45. And then on the machine part, it came back at like 18. And so I was like, okay, so did machining it drop the hardness or what? So we sent it to the customer just to have like some test samples to have them validate it. And their Rockwell tester came in at 26 Rockwell C, which is what the cert said, and the part was also 26C, so nothing had changed.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking that the local machine shop's hardness tester is either out of calibration or I was doing something wrong when I was using it, but I don't know.
If I remember right, the little indenters on those, like the little diamond or ball or whatever you use, those have to be replaced every so often.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's been a long time since I've used one of
Yeah,
those.
but it probably needs to be sent off and calibrated. So, but we're looking at getting one because we're having to do we're trying to order material that is the correct hardness and then avoid sending it out to be heat treated. So we're turning it hardened.
Yeah, that makes
Um,
sense to me.
and so these particular parts, the customer was asking for 30 to 36 Rockwell, and 26 is obviously for Rockwell C underneath. And so I'm waiting for a response from my customer if that's going to be okay or if we need to send out all of the bars to go get heat treated and raised for more C, which would be a pain in the butt.
You would send the complete bar, not the parts.
Correct. Because I want to turn them in a hardened state. Because there's some cosmetic features on these, and I don't really want to have to deal with the discoloring as well. And they get passivated. So they're like a 410 stainless steel,
Oh, okay. And you'll get
I
better
think.
finishes with them
Yeah,
hard too.
yeah. So, and what he told me is that um, this thing has a couple flats on it. It's got a thread on both ends, and it's got some flats. And he wants the hardness not for the function of the part, but for the flats. He doesn't want them to get rounded over when people are trying to screw it on or off if they crank on those wrench flats.
That does make sense.
So it's not for the actual functioning. It's just for end user being an idiot and putting them on too tight or
I mean,
try to
I would
take
call
them
that
off.
function, but yeah.
Yes, but okay, it is function, but it's still. I don't know how big of a difference 4 Rockwell C is going to make to get to their minimum for that particular application. But it could make all the difference in the world. I don't know. Um, so, anyways, there's that. Um,
So I've been working on something.
oh, what you got?
I have some long running parts right now that I've been kind of playing with all day.
Mm-hmm.
And those have it's 18 parts. It's a 2.5 hour cycle time for op one and like a 4 minute cycle time for op two on all of them. But I'm running two at a time. I'm running two op ones. So I have like 5 hours to play with while they're running.
Mm-hmm.
And in that time, I have been working on a little coding project. And it
Ooh.
started by customizing, well, actually, basically starting over on my Fusion post for the Haas. And now, well, one, it incorporates all of the like it supports all of the in process probing and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and like the ability to do feature measurements and yada yada yada, which my old post did not support. Um, and so I kind of merged the in process probing post with my old post. And then I also added the ability where now whenever you hit post, it creates what's called a JSON file, which is basically just a
Mm-hmm.
uh, easy to read machine file for programs, um, that has all of the information about the setup in there. Basically, it's a machine readable setup sheet. That's all it is at this point. So it has the stock
Interesting.
size, the work coordinate system. On the like on the menu where you hit post, you can tell it which kind of fixture it's going to use. It has a list of tools and the expected stick out, all of that stuff.
So
And
is that a file that is it going to actually like post like images, or is it just like text of you're using this fixture?
so right now it's in that JSON, which is human readable if you open it in a text file, but really it's designed for computers to read.
Gotcha.
All just text. The thing I'm working on, or I have been working on today, is a user interface that's going to
Mm-hmm.
go on probably my Microsoft Surface because that thing's getting too old to use as a laptop. It's going to go on my
Gotcha.
Surface, which I'm going to mount to my mill. And on that, it'll have all of my setup sheets and all of like my scheduling right there. So I can just walk up to my mill, click on the button. That information is going to automatically populate as soon as I hit post on the machine. And so I can see, you cut the material to this size, put it in this fixture, load these tools, put it in the mill, run this program. And I'll have all of that right there. Which, I mean, that could literally be replaced by just printing a setup sheet. But because I have all of this in a machine readable format, if I
Mm-hmm.
ever get a robot, the robot will be able to read that same file and do, I guess, everything except the tool setting for me. So that's what I'm working towards. This is like a halfway step towards
Wait,
automation.
when you say the robot will be able to do everything, are you basically saying it's going to be able to know which palette to grab and which program to stick with the palette?
Yes. And I'll be able to schedule all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So that way I can load up, 4 different programs, hit go, and as long as the right fixture is there with the right material in it, it will just grab it, throw it in the machine, run it. I haven't gotten this far, but ideally we'll use the probe for a generated inspection report after machining the part,
Mm-hmm.
and then put it back in the part in its little cradle, the fixture in its cradle.
That'd be cool.
So that's my goal. My goal is I I mean, my goal is to automate 80% of everything that I'm doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, I think, a big step in that direction. I really, really
Sweet.
want to get to the point where I can be in Fusion, I can hit post, and then the machine will just run the part without me interacting at all. That's my goal right now.
Mm.
Um, Obviously, you start to run into issues with, Op2 and Op3 and so on from there. And I'm still trying to kind of figure those out. Um,
But I mean,
I
if you can have some of it automated, it'll give you more time to focus on the other problems.
yeah. And I'm thinking automatically generating soft jaws shouldn't be that bad. I basically already do that. Well, I guess I could just post it like any other program, and I would just have a couple soft jaw vices set up in the machine ready to go. So the first thing it could do is run its own soft jaws. You know, take the blank, put it in there, run the program, take it out of the machine, put the op1 in, and then the operator could load the op2 whenever the machine's done with op1.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I don't know. I probably have like 3 years of development left before I can just hit go from Fusion and get a completed part. But
Yeah.
like low quantity automation is my goal right now.
Yep. Yeah. Good deal. Um, Discord.
Patreons?
Well, Patreons, and then
Um,
There was a cool topic that was brought up.
In the Discord?
Hmm. Air
Discord is
compressors.
very loud in my ear right now. Okay, I need to mute that. I mute that. Anyway, this show has Patreons. The Patreons pay for things like our IMTS trip. Right now, we are saving our little Patreon nickels for upgrading Harrison's sound and, well, mostly his video, and then eventually all of our sound. Our Patreons include, but are not limited to Trey from Vestal Machining, Guy L, Eric H, and I'm sorry if I knew your name earlier and I don't remember your name now. Actually, I know that I know this person, but I don't remember what their name is. I just have what they signed up for on Patreon. And on Patreon, they are Freaky Climber. So thank you, Freaky Climber, a new Patreon at the $10 tier. I know that I know you, but I don't remember who you are. So send me a message and I can put a different name if you want. Also, Alex B, Scott from Design the Everything, Jamie from JSpec Engineering, Chris from Zyke Precision, EJ from Nocturnal Welding, Simon V, Chris at ThoughtBomb Design, Prescott at 1Z2Z Systems, and as ever, the Pocket NC owner himself, Jake Brownson. Also, we have a new Patreon member at the Buck a Show tier, Harris, which threw me off for a second because I thought it said Harrison, but you are Harrison and this is Harris. So thank you, Harris, for joining us. And the aforementioned Freaky Climber. I'm sorry I don't remember who you are. I know I talked to you on Instagram, but I don't remember who it is. So those Patreons get access to beautiful services such as our Discord server, as well as early access to all of our episodes when I remember to post them. And they get access to Ask Us regular Q&As, which we will roll into now. Actually, you can join at the free tier, like Quack. Quack joined us on the free tier and asked us a question. If you join on the free tier, you have access to Q&As. You just don't get access to the paid. Excuse me. You don't get access to the Discord or early access episodes. Wow, that was a spiel.
That was.
First question, Chris Zajic? No, Zaik? What is your preferred lathe insert / tooling, and what is your favorite and least favorite material to turn? My answer is Harrison. What's your answer?
Weston handles so much of the turning. I haven't turned in a while, actually. So that's kind of my answer. But I don't even know the terminology for turning inserts, honestly, for some dumb reason. But it's
You just throw 4 random letters together and hope it works out to an insert.
yeah.
I like the
CGM,
PQD4s.
CGMT. It's
Yeah.
the square-ish looking one, and then the like V style one. Those are the two that we use. CMMG. Yeah, I think that's it. Gosh. Anyways, that's the two inserts we use for
Sorry,
90%.
Chris. You got the wrong people.
Well, yeah. Mill guys more than lathe guys. I used to be in that world more, but Weston's kind of mastered and lives on the lathe side more than I do these days. So he kind of started going that way when I started going more to the 5-axis. So if you were to ask him a 5-axis question, he would be probably just as confused as I am with the lathe side right now. But CNMG is, I believe, our main insert. And the only reason I know that is because that's what Weston talks about with all the sales reps, and he's been trying like 4 different brands.
I think it's what everybody uses. I remember even using those when I had the old Shoreline.
Yeah. So
Give or
that's
take
our
a couple letters.
That's our workhorse, and then whatever the thin, I think it's 30-degree insert or something. It's the V style. It's got 4 edges. Anyways, that's our finisher that we use. I could probably look it up right now, but I'm not going to.
Well,
and
getting
so
back into mills. Oh, sorry.
what was the question on that? And see if I can answer it any better.
Preferred lathe insert / tooling and least favorite and most favorite material.
And most favorite material, I would say any material that has somewhat of a hardened. It either needs to be super soft, but turn and leave a nice finish, like aluminum can be, like brass or aluminum can turn really nice. But but they can also be nightmares. But I would say in general, something with that's pre-hardened to and has at least um like a 5 to 10 Rockwell uh on it, where it's actually on the Rockwell C chart, makes a huge difference in turning, and it turns so much nicer, so much cleaner.
I can tell you from way back in my Shoreline days, brass is unbeatable on a lathe. But I think
Yeah,
everyone knows that. Brass is
yeah.
unbeatable in most machining applications.
We were turning some brass rods for a customer this week, and they were threaded, and we bought them oversized, and we were machining off both ends. And
Uh-huh.
whenever we bought them saw cut, their saw got way off on a couple of them, and so Weston would load them in, and I remember he just started like yelling, like "Oh crap! Oh crap! Oh crap!" But it was fine. But like there was a couple of them that were about 3/8 of an inch longer, and the face build just went, or the facing operation just took that whole big thing in one whack, and he was just like, ah!
Because they were brass, right?
Yeah, they were brass. If it was
Yeah,
any
you
other
can do just about
material,
anything to brass.
yeah, yeah, if it was any other material. But I think he was more worried that it was going to bend the rod out of the way,
Yeah.
because it was only
And then
like a
flack,
half.
flack, 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 flack.
Yeah, it was only like a half-inch rod.
Yeah.
So like, and it was sticking out a decent amount whenever it did that. So, but he was just like, oh my goodness, that scared me.
I miss brass.
So,
But going back to Mills, from Quack, Quack, I like your username. Has Harrison noticed a difference in thermal growth of the Z-axis on his Doosan Big Plus spindle? Is there much thermal growth in the Haas?
the places where I notice it the most on the Haas is in the 5 axis, and we don't have our 4 axis up and running enough to really notice a difference yet. Because I think I'll notice the same problem on the 4th axis as I do on the 5 axis when I start machining stuff on both sides, and all that error compounds. Because on the mill side, um, I've seen a up to 2 thou variation whenever you're machining on both parts and flipping it around, and I'm attributing the most of that to z-axis growth. Um, but I haven't run into that issue on the Doosan. I will say, um, what I have noticed is whenever I probe with the Doosan on a Z surface, and then I go and I take a cut, it's pretty much spot on every single time. Versus the Haas, every once in a while I need to bump it up or down by a thou, because maybe the way that probe goes into there, it sits in a little bit further, a little bit less with the change in temperature, and so whenever the other tools come in and cut, it doesn't exactly line up, and that's based off of the calibration of the probe and the temperature of the machine when it was calibrated. And so I'm always having to adjust my Z offset by a plus or minus a thou or two, um, whenever I'm getting my Z height set in. And so I always try to go, I always preset my first part about 5 thou high, and then I'll cut it, and then I'll measure that distance, and then I'll drop it down, and then it'll be spot on from then on.
When I've started set, or when I've set, when I am setting tools now, I have started giving the machine time to warm up at the RPM that I expect to run that tool. So like
Mm-hmm.
if it's a 3/16 inch tool that I'm going to use on titanium, I'll run it at 10,000 RPM for, or well, maybe stainless at 10,000, but I'll run it at an appropriate RPM for a few minutes before I do the tool touch off. Whereas if
Mm-hmm.
it's like a 1/32 inch tool for aluminum, I'll run that at 30k RPM for a couple minutes. And so
Mm-hmm.
that way the thermal growth is, or the thermal state of the machine is appropriate to the tool that it's going to be running.
Yep.
Um, I honestly don't know if it makes that big of a difference, but I don't know. I haven't really had any accuracy problems for a long time on the machine, so it's definitely not hurting me.
Gotcha. And your spindle still hasn't been rebuilt yet, has it?
It has not.
Okay.
It's still a little bit wobbly, but I'm just keep taking thinner and thinner parts so that it doesn't matter as much.
Gotcha.
Um, I poked Tormach earlier today. Hopefully they'll get back to me soon about that 1500.
Yeah, because you once that machine shows up, you're gonna rebuild or send it off, or have you decided?
I really want to do it myself, but that's a bad idea, so I'm going to send it off to have it professionally done.
Okay.
Um, Speaking of the machine that has the best control I've used, Harris, who is not Harrison, says, "What are your favorite CNC controllers, and do you find a benefit of sticking with one control slash machine tool company versus having different machines and brands in your shop?"
I would say for us, we've had three different brands at this point: Tormach, Haas, and Doosan. And I would say that on the Tormach and Haas side, I have definitely found features on both of those machines that I haven't seen on other machines that I really like. And on the Doosan side, I would say it's just as capable as everything else, but the user interface, it usually takes three times as long to get anything done on it than it would on the other machines, even though it's
Yep.
more than capable of it. It
Is
just,
that Fanic based?
it is. And so, like, I'll give you an example. Um, on the Haas side, if I'm probing it apart and I misprobe, and either I have my length set to the wrong value or I'm not centered enough on my part, um, it'll error out. I hit reset, I move it, I make my adjustments, and I go. On the Doosan side, if I misprobe something, um, the first time that I misprobed something, my machine got into a locked state. I couldn't tool change. I couldn't start a program. I couldn't do anything. Like anything program wise, it would say you're in the middle of a program and you can't restart in the middle. And it was driving me up a freaking wall trying to figure it out. And so eventually I figured out that you have all those different modes you can go into on the Fanic side.
Uh huh.
And so I had to go into memory mode and pull up the code. And then I had to go into edit mode where it pulls up where you can edit the program. And then I had to reset while I was inside that window because it had gotten into a state in the back end and a normal reset wasn't actually resetting the position. And the way it works on Fanic is if I e-stop in the middle of a program, it'll remember where you're at in that program. And if you want to go back to the top, you have to go into edit mode and reset, and it'll bring it up to the top. But I was doing a Renishaw macro, which was running in the background. And so the thing that confused me is I had to go edit like I was editing my program and it stopped in the middle to properly and so like it's stuff like that on the Fanic side that's just like what dumb button combination set do I need to do to get the machine to do what I know it can do? And how did I get in this state? And how do I prevent it from getting in this state in the future? And there's so many little gotchas like that that like if you don't know and you're learning it, it drives you up a wall.
I am convinced that people who love Fanic are completely victims to Stockholm syndrome. Like they've been abused by it for so long that they like have then gotten good at running it, and they like feel powerful that they know how to
It's a
use
club.
the abusive system. Yeah,
It's a club that you've fallen down the stairs and hit your head so many times you think it's cool.
yeah, exactly. It's
Maybe that's
Fanic
a
has
little
been
mean, but
kidnapping people and keeping them captive until they love them.
that might be a little bit mean. But I mean, it's that's what it feels like. Is like there's just so many little things like that that um I don't know. It doesn't feel like it was designed with a human in mind.
It I have seen this over and over and over again. It wasn't designed like in terms like it was engineered. It wasn't designed. They
Yeah,
got it working and then they just left it.
yeah,
And I'm sorry, Fanic, but like there's a lot of people who really like Fanic controllers. But guys, your controllers are designed to be used by people.
yeah,
That should be a major consideration.
yeah. So, um, I'm sure it is. I know it is more than capable to get the job done. The problem is whenever you run into those little hiccups, and like I haven't found any redeeming qualities yet. That like go, oh man, this Fanic has this one feature that I haven't seen on any other machine that gives it an edge. I have not seen that yet. Everything
Well,
that I've seen has been a headache
I
rather
know what the
than a
redeeming factor is. It's that it
what's
just works. Well,
yeah,
it doesn't. When you know what you're doing with it, it just works, and it works forever, and it's never
yeah,
going to be unpredictable or be unreliable. Like that's what Fanic does.
yeah. But I can say I've experienced anomalies on the Haas controller, but those anomalies have never been anything that causes a problem other than like it might stutter a little bit when it's running, or like the processing speed I've seen. And sometimes I don't know if it bogs down or if it's almost like there's a background task running in Windows and your program slows down just a little bit.
Yeah.
I've seen that a couple times. And so like I can understand, like I don't think I will ever see that on the Fanic side ever. And so from that standpoint, I'm like, oh yeah, that's probably gives Fanic the edge. But at the end of the day, I would much rather use the Haas controller just because it's so much so much user friendly, so much more user friendly than the Fanic controller. Um, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I mean, I have seen my Haas control do weird things. And granted, my Haas controller is old enough to drink, but there has been at least twice where I have had to completely turn off the machine and turn it back on again because the controller got stuck. But
Mm-hmm.
every time it was, I believe, because I got a little bit too impatient with the button presses trying to
Mm-hmm.
load a file where it
Yeah.
like was trying to load the USB and I like accidentally mispressed and like told it to DNC something and then tried to read the file again and it just kind of
Yeah.
indefinitely hung and I've had to just reset the controller. I've never had any problems with it in a program.
Yeah, I will say the times that I've seen it bogged down, apart from like the block speed not being able to keep up problems, um, but like just general usage, the only times I've ever seen the controller stutter is when I'm flying on it and I'm asking it to do a million things in like 3 seconds
Yeah.
because I've gotten really good at like hitting all the buttons, and I have not gotten to that state on the Fanic because it's like, uh, what do I do? So the Fanic has tons of time to think about what I'm asking it to do. um, and like one thing that I want to get working on the Doosan that I have yet to get working, and it's really frustrating, is tool management,
Like tool life management.
tool life management. So from what I've been able to figure out so far, to use tool life management, I have to throw a tool into a group, and it's the same thing that you would do if you were setting up sister tooling. And so you can set up multiple tools in one group, but if I'm if I have a tool library of 200 tools, I would have to sit there on the Fanic and set up 200 different groups with unique tool numbers, and I don't even think I could set up that many groups. I think it's actually can hold less groups than it can tool numbers. And so and then once I set those up, I have to call it in a very special way in my program, which I haven't even tried posting with Fusion to see how to do it to get it to actually track tool life. And so I understand why people don't use that side of it versus the Haas side. If it's a tool number and they have it, then they're tracking how much time it's been in the cut. So you're done. I don't have to set anything up. It's just there. I can use it or I cannot. The biggest complaint I have with the Haas tool side is that I can't set it to error out once the tool's been X amount of time in the cut. It's only based off of either spindle load or off of how many times that tool has been called.
I wonder if you can do it in G code.
So, and that's the one thing that Doosan side does have is if I did spend the time to get it all working, I can say after so many minutes in the cut, error out or have me come look at it or something.
Could you just set it up for your core tools?
I could. I could set it up for my core tools, and that would probably be worth doing. But it's just frustrating because I'm trying to on the Haas side. uh, and if we ever get like an ERP system, um, then I'm going to, um, it's going to make tracking this information a lot better. But I'm trying to track the tools, how much tool life I'm getting out of my core tools and all of my tools that I can, that I'm going through consistently, and figure out what feeds and speeds do and how it increases tool life versus decreased tool life versus productivity and all that kind of fun stuff. Um, and so having that number gives me at least a ballpark range to look for.
Yeah, that makes sense. I wonder if I can add that to my little automation system that I'm putting on my machine. That'd be fun.
Yeah. And so, and like it's helped me catch some weird anomalies because, um, I have a 3/8 inch 5 flute from Haas and a 1/2 inch 5 flute from Haas that I run in stainless,
Hmm.
and and they're both running in the 600 SFM range in stainless. And my 3/8 inch tool, I can get about 10 to 15 hours in the cut before I need to change tools. And my 1/2 inch, I haven't really gotten it to last longer than about 2 hours so far, and I
Interesting.
don't know why.
Because you're
Because
running it
they're
at 600 SFM in stainless.
Yeah, but if SFM is agnostic to the diameter of the tool, that shouldn't matter. Um,
I think
because they're
your
both
I think your
they're
3/8 is just a unicorn.
it lasts for freaking ever compared to all the other tools. And it could be that Haas just whoever's manufacturing that tool, and there is something to be said about that because, we did when we first started using Haas tooling and we had a 1/4 inch chamfer tool. That thing was weak and it was blowing up all the time, and we were going through them like crazy. And so I had to slow down all my feeds and speeds and all this stuff. Well, we were wanting to switch over to a different one, and we actually recently did. We're trying out a 5 flute chamfer tool from Helical, and it is so much
Uh-huh.
faster than the Haas ones, and not that much more. Um, but the last batch of chamfer tools that we got from Haas, and I only know this because I found an old chamfer tool stuck in a corner, and I was comparing them. um, they changed the geometry on the cutters drastically. And I had one of the old ones and I loaded it up using the speeds and feeds that I've been using, and it broke in about 20 minutes. And then I compared it to the newer version of that tool that Haas had, and the webbing in it is like 4 times the thickness on a per tooth basis. And so the new ones you can push so much longer. In fact, the new one that I have lasted 26 hours in the cut before it gave out.
I don't think I've ever broken a chamfer tool once.
So yeah, but I mean, I'm chamfering tapped holes of uh like M10 or M12 holes that have like a 35 40 thou lead in chamfer.
Yeah. And
And
I just do teeny tiny little 5 thou chamfers.
yeah, and
Yeah.
so and I'm doing that in one pass. Um, which I mean is it's not that much, but at the same time for a chamfer tool, especially depending on where on the flutes you're engaging at that, it can make a big difference.
Yep.
So,
All right. Last Patreon question from another one of our free members, I think. Ashton Griffith. Uh, entrepreneurial slash shop books question mark.
um, like QuickBooks.
No, like book recommendations.
Oh, book recommendations. Um, hmm. Whew.
Well, I can do some. I mean, there's always the goal. There's always the E-Myth. Those are ones that are just necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the lean thinking, the Toyota way, also good,
Mm-hmm.
though a little bit more dry. Um, there's we're gonna get farther away from strictly like machining types of businesses now.
Yeah.
Um, I need to pull up my Audible because I'm
The
blanking on some of the names of these. The Third Door by some dude is really really good. I don't remember his
yeah.
name, Alex something.
The one
Um,
that I told you about, that about the profit first.
oh
That
yeah,
one's
all of the Mike McCowitz stuff.
yep. And then one that's not really business related, but it'll help you develop good habits is the Power of Habits. I think is what it's called.
I need to check
It
that
was
one out.
really good. Just talking about developing good habits and how they can affect your life.
I have
Um,
21 pages of audiobooks. There's a lot to go through. I'm sorry. The Third Door is one I recommend to people a lot because it's a fun read. If you haven't read The Third Door, that one's definitely worth checking out. All the Mike McCowitz stuff, especially Profit First. Harrison and I
hmm
both use that.
let's see here. The design of everyday things. That's less about um, like machining specifically, but like if you're ever trying to design something, it goes over a lot of good thought processes to have when you're designing things. It's really good.
That was some of the birth source of the Design the Everything brand.
Um,
Um, Becoming Trader Joe. It's a book about Trader Joe's. That was pretty good.
the
There's
Power of
also
Habit.
one by
That's what it was. Um, How to Win Friends and Influence People is another great business book for developing business relationships and just being a good human being.
there's 2 Second Lean if you want an audiobook narrator who you just want to punch.
Yep. Um, how bad do you want it? If you're like starting out a business and it's going to be a struggle, that's a good book about just persevering. I think it's follows Olympic athletes. It's a good book.
Critical Chain by Eliyahu Goldratt, the guy who wrote The Goal. That's another one that's good.
If you get stressed out a lot, and I used to, the subtle art of not giving a fuck.
I haven't read that one.
It's very vulgar, but as someone who was in a my engineering job before this was so high stress it gave me ulcers. That book really helped me honestly more than anything in that environment.
The Messy Middle by Scott Belksy. That was pretty good.
Um,
Small Giants by Bo Burlingham.
where's the one
Shoe
I'm
Dog
thinking
by
of?
Phil Knight. That's another good one. Let My People Go Surfing. Delivering Happiness by the guy behind Zappos. That's another good one.
Mm-hmm.
All the Mike McCowitz stuff is good.
Yep. Oh, Turn the Ship Around. That one's kind of about leadership in business if you're a part of a bigger company. Um, it's also a really just cool story to hear.
Built from Scratch. That's about Home Depot being founded. That was another good one. I'm only on page 9 of 21 of my audiobooks. Good to Great by Jim Collins.
Start with why. Um,
Um, I've read that one. Blue Ocean Strategy.
mm-hmm.
I remember that one being a little bit more boring, but it's a
Yeah,
very well known one. Um, I just there's another one that keeps being on the tip of my tongue that I keep forgetting.
I've been so busy. I'm looking through a lot of these books, and I have a lot of books that I have not listened to yet that I need to that are good books.
I have a lot that I listened to like 4 years ago, and I need to re-listen to.
Mm-hmm.
How I Built This by Guy Raz. That's another good one.
One about kind of investing in like personal finances that's pretty good is The Richest Man in Babylon. That's just a good general book. I have a lot of books that are not necessarily business books, but are like just good life books. Will It Fly? How to Test Your Next Business Idea. I think that one, if I remember, that one was pretty good.
Built to Sell by John Warrowill. Warrowillow? Warrillo? Built to Sell by John Someone. That's a good one.
Just a general good story that I would recommend anyone is American Icon. It's the story of Ford through the 2008
Hmm,
financial crisis. That was
I
just
read that one.
that was a pretty good book.
Well, I think we. Oh, okay. Last one for me. Purple Cow. Purple Cow's good.
Oh yeah,
Seth
I
Godin.
need to listen to that one.
I think that was the most audiobook or book recommendations we've ever given anybody on the
Yep,
podcast.
yep,
Um, for me, they're all audiobooks. If you guys don't know that, that's why I wear headphones all the time.
yeah. Two more, not necessarily business books, but ones that I really enjoyed for those of the engineering mindset. Skunk Works, which is about the development of the SR-71 Blackbird, and How to Build a Car, which is the story of the aerodynamics, the history of the aerodynamics in F1 racing, and the guy that kind of brought that to the forefront. Those are
Oh,
both like
there's
really good
Failure is
books.
Not an Option by Gene Kranz. That's another
Yep,
good one.
that is another good one.
That was a lot of books. I hope you
That
have
was a lot of
a lot
books.
of Audible credits. Also, don't forget about podcasts. There's Incremental, the continuous
Mm-hmm.
improvement podcast with Ben. I'm going to stop doing names. I'm too tired for names. Um, Uriel Eisen and Ben Badoni.
Mm-hmm.
I met him at IMTS. There's, of course, the Business of Machining podcast, and everybody should know about With Intolerance. If you listen to
Mm-hmm.
any machining podcast, listen to that one. There's
Mm-hmm.
also Swarf casts, which I stopped listening to. I never liked them as much, but it was fine. It's not for me, but it's for someone.
Yep. There was one more thing that we need to talk about from the Patreons. You had that episode
What?
topic suggestions area.
Oh yeah, on the Discord that I totally pay attention to. Um,
I can go over this one a little bit.
yeah, air
Um,
compressors and tubes.
yeah, so Freaky Climber was asking us to have a conversation on the podcast about airline plumbing for your machines. I know most have gone with copper pipes or some form of rigid pipe solution. What about using PEX for piping? Are you using PEX? What do
Um,
you?
I have Rapid Air, which is PEX aluminum PEX.
Yeah, okay. So
Oh, I know who Freaky Climber is. Why does your name not show up anymore? I'm sorry. Distraction.
um so we're both using Rapid Air products then. I have the hardline tubing Rapid Air,
Okay, I have the Flexi one.
and I'm about to get some of the Flexi one. Well, I have some. I need to add it into my system. So I'm gonna have a mix of hard and flex. So backstory that I don't think I got into. Our Haas tool changer is popping really, or Haas tools are popping really, really bad. We had a tech come out last Tuesday and look over everything. He checked the taper of the machine. He checked our tool holders. He checked run out. He checked a lot of stuff. And basically, what it came down to was potentially two issues. One, he said our air volume wasn't high enough, and during a tool change, it would drop 40 psi on the inlet side.
That'll do
And
it.
so we're going to be increasing the volume, and that's why I'm going. And we had a 1/4 inch airline running to the machine, and we're going to change it to a 1/2 inch.
You had a 1/4 inch?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, not as your loop. Okay,
Not
sorry.
as our
Going
loop.
from your drop.
Yeah, our
I
drop
was like, oh
from
my gosh.
we have a 3/4 inch loop, and it was going down from 3/4 to quarter to the machine. And
Okay.
so
And yours
we're
is
gonna.
a loop, right? It's not just a line.
It's a U. It's a U. It hasn't made it. It hasn't looped
Oh,
all the way to the other side yet.
doing the loop actually makes a big difference.
Yeah. Um, which we might end up doing at some point, but so far 3/4 inch is plenty of volume for what we have on it right now. But so we're gonna increase that, and so we're gonna do the max line. So we have Rapid Air, which is their hard
Yeah.
line,
Rapid is the
and
company.
Rapid Air's coming. What is their fast
I want
pipe?
to call it
Fast pipe.
fast. Yeah, I was about to say fast pipe. Though, is that the 2 second lean guys product?
I don't know. We have the hard tubing, and
Oh no, it is fast pipe. Confirmed.
okay, fast pipe, and then we're going to max line from fast pipe to max line to the machine, and that's going to be that PEX tubing with the aluminum sleeve.
Yeah.
So
Maxline is really easy to put up, but it looks ugly and it's hard to get straight. Like, well, it's ugly because it's hard to get straight.
and the rapid air. Is that what it was?
Rapid Air's the company. Yeah.
What was it? Fast pipe. Fast pipe looks better, but the fittings for it are insanely expensive compared to the pipe. Like each fitting is like $30, and it looks straighter, but we have like the 10-foot sections of pipe, and so it's like section fitting, section fitting, section fitting, and it's really expensive because of that.
Yeah.
And the only reason we did that is because the company we bought our air compressor through um, is no longer a rapid air supplier, but they had a whole bunch of leftover rapid air tubing, and we got it for a really cheap price and only had to buy the fittings. Well, no, we didn't only have to buy the fittings. We bought all the tubing for like a couple $100 because they were just trying to get rid of it. Because we were looking at going to a 1-inch tubing all the way around, and we settled for the 3/4 because of how much cheaper it was. But the fittings for it were pretty expensive.
Yeah. I have 3/4 inch max line in a full loop all the way around mine.
Yeah. Um, but so there was that. So I have no complaints with mine. Copper piping seems really expensive.
Yes.
Even though
Yes, it is.
even though the rapid air stuff is still really expensive too, but not quite as expensive as the copper pipe, and you don't need to braze any of the joints or anything. Um, I will say the rapid air, we have no leaking anywhere except for the MPT connections, and
That sounds right to me.
that's not really rapid air's fault. Um, and then later on in that discussion, they talk about machines and specifically Kaiser
By machines, you
Air,
mean air compressors.
yeah, air compressors, where they talk about like the differences between buying a machine or getting a subscription service for your air compressor. And the idea of a subscription service for your air compressors, I personally do not like at all.
I am 100% with you. It's like
Like
leasing a
that,
car.
yeah, that sounds horrible. We got a pretty nice air compressor. I think it's a Kashan air compressor, something like that. Anyways, it's a really nice air compressor. It was 10 horse. Yeah, 10 horse, and it was around 8 grand, 7 or 8 grand, with a dryer, 3-phase, and it's been awesome. No complaints. I will say I've kind of got a better understanding of it since I bought it. So we bought it, and whenever you're specing it out, you can spec it out at 100 psi, 125 psi, or 150 psi. And the way you get those different pressure, those max pressure ratings, is they change out the pulleys. And so for how fast it spins the rotors. And what I didn't understand in the beginning was I was like, oh, I'll go up to 150 psi and then it can shut off, and then it will only kick on when it gets down to 100 and say 15 psi, which is I think what I have it set for my minimum. And then I can get some time where the machine's not running constantly. And the problem with that is twofold. One, rotary air compressors don't like to start and stop all the time. Um, but I wasn't as worried about that because I have it set to where it'll only shut off after it's been running for like 5 or 10 minutes, and it hasn't seen demand. So that's when it'll shut off. But two, the other reason is you get much less CFM the higher pressure you go, which I didn't make sense in my mind because I thought you were spinning it faster to get to the higher pressures, but it's actually the inverse. They spin it faster to get the higher CFM, and what's limiting
Oh, interesting.
what's
Okay.
limiting um the pressure is the fact that as it builds up, the torque level goes above what the motor can handle. And
Interesting.
so
Okay.
so if you're running it at 100 psi, you're getting 10 to 20% more CFM for the same horsepower, but they can't go any higher because you would start popping breakers because the load on the
Yeah.
motor would increase as the pressure gets so much higher. That's the part of the equation I didn't realize, is that unless you need that higher pressure for an actual air gun or something that you're using, keeping a lower pressure and getting a smaller pulley will actually increase your RPMs and give you more CFM.
Huh. Interesting.
So,
Today I
um,
learned.
mm-hmm. It also quiets the machine down the higher it's spinning, the faster it's spinning.
Because it changes the pitch?
Mm-hmm.
Or, okay.
So at
More of a
higher,
vrr and less of a vrr, 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 vrr.
yeah, pretty much, and it's a little higher pitch, but the decibel reading is lower. Um, and so the only reason I know that is because we had them switch it to 150 psi, and it was much louder. And then we figured the noise was, we had them switch it back, and that's when we figured out that they were actually changing to a smaller pulley, not a larger pulley. And I sat down with the technician. I was like, okay, all of this now makes sense. And
Yeah.
so in the machine, I could actually increase my max pressure that I'll allow it. And so the tech actually limits it to 125 digitally, and they base that, they have an amp reading that they'll an amp monitor that they'll plug up to it while it's running, and they'll adjust the max pressure based on when the amperage hits a certain
Interesting.
point. So at least that's how our tech did it. So anyways, that was just something very interesting. But all that to come back, he said, um, if you go with the subscription service, that you can kind of spec things out. You gotta pay for a minimum usage of 40 hours,
Okay.
and so I would be curious what that hourly rate is for that system. I have no idea. But just based on my machine, if I were to get a similar size machine and I were paying for a minimum of um, 40 hours a week, and I was only hitting that minimum, then that would be equivalent to $12.50 an hour, which is like that, and that would have it pay for itself in a year. My machine paid for itself in
In
a
one
year.
year? Okay.
In one
Yeah.
year, and so my guess is it's probably going to be in the neighborhood of $3 to $4 an hour, if I had to guess. Which, if that were the case, then running your machine at um, 80 to 120 hours a month would cover the machine, would cover paying for a new machine rather than using the subscription service. So, and you would still have to pay a minimum of, let's just say it was $3 an hour times 40. So you'd still be paying a minimum of $120 a month to have that machine just sitting there, even if you weren't using it. So I don't like that idea.
Yeah. I don't
It
understand the value proposition. The value proposition is what? You're going to pay them and they're going to do the maintenance? Well,
Yeah,
if you bought a machine, you could pay them and they could do the maintenance.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. My maintenance on my machine is, it has a counter and it has an oil reservoir, and I can either pay them $50 to send out a tech to switch it, or I can buy the filter and change it out myself and then reset the timer. So it's like it's not so much of a service headache that I see it being an issue. At least not in the time that I've had this compressor.
and I mean, all things that are mechanical break eventually. And
Mm-hmm.
like, you're going to have some issue with your compressor at some point. But again, that would also happen with a leased compressor. And the
Yep.
difference is that you're going to pay them to come fix it.
Mm-hmm. So
So,
I'll give an example. My dad is a pilot, and this is the point where a subscription service, I think, makes sense for what they're doing. So my dad is a pilot, and he flies for a major company, and they have these big uh, jets, and you have to do maintenance on them every 1,000 hours of flight time. And every 2,000 hours, they have to take the whole engine apart all the way down and go through all the components and make sure everything's good. The major airlines have a service now where you can pay a fee based on the amount of hours, and then when it gets up to the time to do that maintenance, it's already been prepaid for, basically. And so you just factor that cost into your operating cost of your per flight basis. And then when it comes time for maintenance, all of that's already been covered. And so, in that respect, a subscription service like that, where you're not getting hit with $1 million bill every 10,000 hours of or 1,000 hours of flight time or whatever, makes sense.
Yeah. At that point, it's not insurance, I guess, because you know it's going to happen.
Yeah,
But it's just I don't know.
you're
Maybe it would
you're
be better just to wait until you are due the expense and take a loan.
yeah, but in that type of environment, I feel like that's what they're trying to do with air, but I don't think air has that, like, oh no, I have to swallow a $50 cost once every year, maybe, or whatever. Like, it doesn't seem like it's adding value, or the monthly burden of me having to pay a subscription fee doesn't seem to um, outweigh the well, not outweigh, doesn't seem like a better option than just buying an air compressor and just paying it once and buy once, cry once type of deal.
Yeah, because then if you need to upgrade in the future, you can keep your original as a spare. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. The only place I could see it possibly making sense is if you're like a brand new startup with lots of seed money and you just don't know where you're going or what you're doing or what you're going to want. And so you just like get the lease because who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that, and like, or if you are in a situation where you're going to grow, 4 times the size in the next 4 years, and like you can kind of, you have a history or some ability to see down the road and see you going so fast that investing money in uh, a system that you're going to end up throwing in the trash and moving into another system, and then throwing the trash and then move into another system, paying a subscription fee where you're like, okay, I'm going to be using this for a while, and then I'm going to move over and use this for a while, and then I'm going to move over and use this for a while. Like, then I think that subscription stuff makes sense, because you're not having to resell or getting into obsolete equipment and having to change over to something else.
Yep. Um, One last note. Speaking of equipment, I bought a saw.
Woohoo!
It should actually. I don't. It hasn't shipped yet. I don't know when it's going to get here. But I officially have bought and paid for a Tormach AF50 or AF50 Plus, excuse me, to make its way to my shop. I did get a
Sweet.
really, really good discount from Tormach because it is not only is it a prototype unit, but it is a unit that they have used on their shop floor for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but even with that, they still gave me a really good deal. So
Gently
I'm super
used,
excited for that.
gently used. Only went to the grocery store on the weekends.
Yeah. Only ever cut aluminum and plastic. I wonder if it's the saw that shows up in the YouTube video I did at Tormach. It might actually
Probably.
be. So I don't
Um,
know what quirks come with it being a beta unit. That might be interesting to find out. But
well, let me know what you think of it, because I'm in the market for an auto saw, and I've kind of wrote off the Tormach auto saw thus far. But if it turns out that the stuff that I'm worried about isn't as big of a deal, then it could be back in the running.
yeah, at least specs wise, the only thing that I don't like is that you still have to manually change the pulleys to set different speeds. I really wish that was inverter.
Yeah,
Um, but for a $5,000 saw, eh,
yeah.
like
It's the speed change and the how you set up to do your cut lengths that's kind of annoying. Like, I want to be
um,
able to just go up and like type in I want a 5 inch part, and I think on that one you have like a nut and something that you got to adjust how long the stroke's going.
yeah, it's kind of like a half nut on a lathe that no, that's a bad example. It's like a shaft collar that has a button, and you like press the button, and then you can kind of do a big move, and then
Oh,
you
okay,
can you release the button, it activates the half nut, and then you can rotate it to fine
gotcha.
adjust. That
That's not
may be
horrible.
new to the 50 plus. I'm not sure.
Interesting.
The old one may have been one you just had to crank.
Yeah, Yeah, I don't know enough about it. Tormach, if you're listening, make a more detailed video on how that thing actually works so people can have a better idea.
I will make a video for you, Harrison.
Thank you.
I was gonna go through it like I went through the 1500 MX and like
Mm,
look at everything, like just find
yeah,
all the little nerdy details we can on that, and just
yeah,
put them out there for anybody who needs them.
that would be extremely beneficial. Um, got anything else? I'm trying to think if I had anything else.
I bought the
Um,
Skunkworks book while we were talking
oh,
because
that's a
I've been
good
meaning
book.
to read that for a long time, and you reminded me of it.
That's a good book.
I started designing a pair of headphones that I
Ooh,
am considering as a product line.
headphones,
Headphones like these. Actually, not like these. The first ones would be more like studio headphones.
but like you're not going to do all the electronics and stuff. Is this just like a frame or like what? I'm so
So
confused right now.
the if you're doing just like plug-in headphones, the electronics are actually super, super, super simple. It's like solder 4 leads and you're done. Um, I have looked into Bluetooth headphones. If you're not doing sound canceling, it's super, 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 super simple. If you're doing sound canceling, things get a little bit more complicated. But basically, at
It,
this point, you can just buy the chips.
so what? But okay, what would be the draw to AJ designed headphones that's
So
different than what's on the market?
they would be the reason this rabbit hole started is because I'm tired of breaking headphones because I go through like I mean I these headphones have been repaired probably like 6 times. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if you can see it there, but there's there's a metal splint. I've installed a splint onto these headphones, and I have to
Mm-hmm.
replace it every like month or two. So I would make them all open source. I would publish my design files. They would be designed to be easily repairable
Mm-hmm.
and made just out of bulletproof like materials and stuff. So
Okay.
no more
It would
cheap
still need,
plastic headphones.
yeah, but the problem with bulletproof materials is it needs to be flexible to fit your head.
So I have a band designed that is titanium rods that are bent, so they're kind of springy
Mm-hmm.
because titanium is very springy, and then it's going to have a leather kind of like cradle that your actual that determines the height of them and that your head actually rests against.
Okay. That'll be interesting if that comes to
I
fruition.
to be fair, I have feasible ideas at this point, and it has gone no further. I don't know if it's
Okay.
going to go any farther. It is just me having fun with it, and if it turns into something, it turns into something.
Okay.
But
Yeah, like if it sounds like a fun personal project, not necessarily a product project.
yeah, I will almost certainly make at least one pair,
Yeah.
and if there's more than one pair, we shall see. But
If you absolutely love them, you might have something.
yeah, my my theory was one. I literally use headphones more than anything else. Like, there's no device I use more than headphones.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I yeah, there's probably not even an article of clothing that I own that I've worn more than these headphones.
Mm-hmm.
Um, two, I wear them in all my videos. So if it was a product that I sold, it would be a very easy, like,
So.
constantly being advertised
Mm-hmm.
because I legitimately wear headphones basically all the time.
Speaking of which, hey, buy my merch. No.
Yeah. Yeah, with it, not with intolerance. That's not our podcast. Who are we? Taps and Patience merch when?
Yeah.
With Intolerance does have some. I don't know if it's merch, but he redid some of his logos and stuff
Mm-hmm.
for IMTS, and they look sick. So go buy the With Intolerance merch if
Yeah,
he
I need
has
to get some of
merch.
that.
I was gonna bug him for a T-shirt, but everyone else is bugging him for a T-shirt, so
Yeah.
I did not. But yeah, go buy With Intolerance merch, and maybe you'll get Taps and Patience merch. Do you guys
Yeah.
want that?
That's a good question.
If you
We would actually
do,
have to
leave a
come up with some
comment.
good designs.
Yeah, we'll hire Adam C again. He'll do some good stuff for us, I'm sure.
Um,
Uh,
yeah. Awkward outro activated. All right, guys, it's getting close to the end of this particular episode. Hopefully, you've enjoyed our a little peek behind the curtain in our respective businesses yet again. And you know, liken to see I've noticed a major uptick in since IMTS in communication between all you guys since now I've met some of you guys in person. So that's awesome. So keep it coming. And yeah, thanks for hanging out with us this time, guys, and we'll catch y'all next time. This has been Harrison with Precision Ingenuity signing out with AJ from Audacity Micro.
I'm sorry, everybody, that the outro music didn't make it into the last podcast. I don't know why. It's just a thing Zencaster does, but I heard we looked really funny dancing around with no music.